The accident report arrived with no argument inside it. A delivery van had struck a concrete divider at 9:42 p.m. The driver said the navigation app froze, the steering corrected late, the police diagram was clean, the repair estimate was clean. Even the witness statement sounded rehearsed in an ordinary way. Mara Hale read it once and almost approved the payout. Then she opened the attached phone backup. The driver had deleted a root file after the crash. That made sense. People panic. People tidy their phones when they think a company device will be inspected, but the deleted file appeared again in the next backup window. Not restored by hand, not copied from another folder. It simply existed where it should not exist, stamped at a time when the driver was supposedly still standing beside the ruined van, shaking too hard to unlock the screen. Mara looked at the timestamp again. The spoken version needed 9:42. The metadata was quietly pointing somewhere earlier. Mara worked claims in a glass office above a bus depot. Below her window, engines idled before dawn. Inside, her desk held 3 folders, 2 warnings, and 1 quiet fear. Another disputed claim could move her name to review. This case should have helped her. A single vehicle crash meant no injured family, no court fight, no angry driver pointing at a second car that vanished. Just a damaged van, a company policy, and a payout small enough to disappear inside quarterly numbers. The driver was Evan, 26, temporary, nervous in his photograph. Mara recognized his employer before she read the address. 6 months earlier, she had rejected their safety upgrade request. It was procedural. It was defensible. It was also the kind of decision people remembered after a crash. That made the neat report feel like relief. The police had no reason to dig deeper. The company wanted the van replaced. Evan wanted to keep his job. Everyone had a practical reason to accept the same story. Mara understood that kind of agreement. Most cases did not begin with lies. They began with tired people choosing the easiest version that could still be true. The official version was simple enough to survive questions. Evan had been returning from a late delivery. Rain had started 20 minutes earlier. The road curved under an overpass, where standing water collected near the divider. His navigation app froze at the bend. He looked down for 1 second. The van drifted. The front tire crossed the shallow puddle, lost grip, and pulled him left. He overcorrected, struck concrete, and stopped facing the wrong direction. The vehicle data seemed to support him. Speed fell from 38 to 12 in less than 2 seconds. The steering angle jumped sharply right, then left. The brake pedal registered late pressure, exactly like a startled driver reacting too slowly. Mara wrote the first note in the margin. Plausible. Phones froze. Wet roads changed friction. Human reaction time was never instant. A driver looking down could lose a lane before his brain caught up. The witness helped too. A warehouse guard had heard the impact, stepped outside, and found Evan sitting on the curb. He was pale, breathing fast, both hands wrapped around his phone. That detail felt human. People held the useless object after the damage was done. Mara almost closed the file before checking the device log. It was routine, not suspicion. Company phones backed up application data every 15 minutes. Most backups were messy. They carried temporary files, failed syncs, duplicate names, and little scraps of ordinary use. Evan's backup was different. The route file vanished at 9:47 p.m., 5 minutes after the crash. That still fit panic. A frightened driver might delete the thing he blamed. But the same file appeared again at 10. Sorry. Mara leaned closer. The file had not been opened after deletion. No restore button had been pressed. No cloud recovery event appeared beside it. The backup simply listed the route as present again, with the same internal identifier. That was the quiet problem. A copied file usually received a new record. A restored file usually carried a recovery trace. This one looked less like a return and more like a device catching up with something it already knew. Mara stopped writing the approval note. The accident still made sense, but the phone no longer behaved like a witness describing one clean emergency. Mara called Evan at 8:10 the next morning. He answered on the second ring, too quickly for someone asleep after a crash. His voice was thin, careful, and polite. She asked him to describe the phone freezing. He gave the answer from the statement almost perfectly. Rain under the overpass. Screen stuck on the route. One glance down, concrete. Mara let the silence stretch. Then she asked what he did with the phone afterward. Evan breathed through his nose. I don't remember exactly, he said. That should have been normal. Shock cuts memory into fragments. People remember impact, noise, faces, then lose the small actions between them. But Evan remembered other details too well. He remembered the guard's yellow jacket. He remembered the smell of coolant. He remembered calling dispatch at 9:51 before the tow truck arrived. Yet he could not remember deleting the route file. Mara did not accuse him. She asked if anyone else had touched the phone. No, Evan said. The answer came fast again. Too fast to be confidence, too fast to be memory. When the call ended, Mara wrote one word beneath the backup window. Behavior. At first, Evan's hesitation still helped him. A frightened person does not replay an evening like video. Memory is built from attention. During stress, Attention narrows toward threat, sound, pain, and escape. That could explain the missing deletion. He remembered the guard because the guard arrived after danger. He remembered coolant because smell can anchor a scene. He remembered dispatch because calling for help gave him a task. Deleting a route file was smaller. It could fall through the cracks. Mara gave that explanation room to stand. She wrote it beside his statement, not against it. A person could be honest and incomplete at the same time. Then she replayed the call in her head. Evan had not sounded blank when asked about the deletion. He had sounded prepared for everything except that one question. His pause had not been confusion. It had been a search for the safest answer. People think lies are found in nervousness. In reality, nervousness appears in truth too. The better signal is a change in pattern. Evan was detailed, then empty, slow, then fast, specific, then absolute. That did not prove deception, but it made his clean memory uneven. Now Mara had a driver who remembered the crash well enough to support the claim, but not well enough to explain the one action the phone had recorded. Mara built the timeline on paper first. She trusted paper when software looked too clean. At 9:42, the van hit the divider. At 9:44, the guard stepped outside. At 9:47, the route file was deleted. At 9:51, Evan called dispatch. At 10U, the backup found the route again. The sequence still had a possible shape. Crash, panic, delete file, call dispatch, backup error. Mara underlined the minutes between 9:42 and 9:51. 9 minutes could hold almost anything. A person could climb from a van, check their face, search for the phone, delete a file, talk to a guard, and make a call. Then she requested the guard's incident log. It arrived as a photo of a clipboard. The handwriting was slanted and rushed. At 9:43, the guard recorded impact heard. At 9:45, driver seated on curb. At 9:46, driver unable to stop shaking. At 9:48, driver refuses ambulance, phone in right hand. Mara paused at that line. Not because Evan held the phone, because the deletion at 9:47 required a steady unlock, a file menu, and a decision. The timeline did not break yet, but it had started to bend. At first, Mara treated the 9 minutes as generous. After an accident, time feels stretched. People describe seconds as minutes. They place actions in the wrong order because memory stores fear before sequence. That helped Evan. A shaken driver might say he called dispatch after speaking to the guard, even if the call came first. A witness might write 9:46 when the real moment was 9:47. Clocks on phones, radios, and walls often drift by a minute. Mara could not build fraud on loose minutes, so she stopped looking at feelings and checked anchors. The guard's log used dispatch radio time. The phone call used carrier time. The backup used server time. 3 different clocks were not perfect, but they pointed in the same direction. The crash happened first. The shaking happened next. The deletion landed inside the narrowest, least believable part of the night. People think timelines fail because someone gives the wrong time. In reality, timelines fail when independent clocks agree too well against the story. One error is noise. 3 aligned errors become pressure. Mara crossed out backup error. The case no longer rested on whether Evan remembered correctly. It rested on whether someone could make his phone perform a precise action while everyone believed he was too shaken to act. Mara asked for the raw sync report. The company sent a polished export first. It showed the crash file, the route file, the deletion, and the clean backup. Everything matched the claim packet. She sent it back. Raw logs arrived 2 hours later, buried in a compressed folder with a password in a separate email. Mara opened them without moving from her chair. At 9:47, the route file was marked deleted. At 9:47 and 14 seconds, the phone registered a remote management command. The label was dull enough to miss. Policy refresh. Mara read it twice. A policy refresh was normal on company phones. Administrators used it to update permissions, lock lost devices, or remove unsafe files. It did not look like hacking. It looked like office maintenance. That made it more dangerous. The official version needed Evan alone with a frozen navigation app and a guilty deletion. The raw log showed the phone receiving instructions from somewhere outside the crash scene. Mara checked the sender field. It was not a person's name. It was the company device console, authenticated and routine, speaking to Evan's phone while the guard was writing that Evan could not stop shaking. Mara did not treat the command as proof. Company phones talk to servers all day. A policy refresh could be automatic. A crashed device reconnecting after signal loss might receive delayed instructions. That explanation held for almost a minute. Then she compared the 2 records. The deletion appeared in the phone database first. The policy refresh appeared 14 seconds later. At 10 show, the missing route returned because the backup captured the older server copy, not the phone's newer state. That was the trick. People think deleting a file means destroying it. In reality, many systems keep different versions in different places. A phone may show one truth. A server may still hold another. Backups do not preserve life as it happened. They preserve whatever version each system had when the snapshot arrived. The file had not magically returned. 2 clocks had exposed 2 realities. On the phone, the route was deleted after the crash. On the server, the route still existed from before the deletion. When the backup window closed, both versions collided in the record. Mara opened a new page. The crash report had used the deletion to suggest panic. Now the same deletion suggested timing, access, and control. The clean digital trail had become the least clean thing in the case. Mara pinned 4 sheets to the wall. The police diagram, the guard's log, the phone backup, the raw sync report. For the first time, they did not describe the same night. The official version still had weight. Evan had crashed. The van had hit concrete. The rain was real. The steering data was real. But the story around those facts had begun to move. If Evan deleted the route in panic, his behavior had to change sharply at the worst possible moment. If the phone restored the file by error, the server had to preserve exactly the version the claim needed. If the policy refresh was routine, it had arrived with strange precision. Too many innocent explanations were now standing in a line. Mara called the company's fleet manager. He sounded tired before she finished her name. He said the van was old. He said drivers complained about navigation lag. He said no one wanted trouble. Then Mara asked who had console access. The tiredness left his voice. "There are logs for that," he said. "I'm asking for names," Mara said. He gave her 3. One was an administrator, one was a supervisor. The third was Evan's dispatcher, Lena, who had filed the first incident summary before midnight. Mara did not start with Lena. She started with the facts Lena had arranged. The first incident summary never said Evan caused the crash. It said he looked down because the navigation app froze. It said the route file was later deleted. It said the device records were attached for transparency. Each sentence was careful. None of it was false by itself. That was why the report worked. The control was not over the facts. The control was over where people looked first. Rain made them look at the road. Steering data made them look at Evan. The deletion made them look at guilt. Mara placed the policy refresh beside Lena's midnight summary. The timing changed the shape. Someone with console access did not need to invent a crash. They only needed to manage the meaning of the crash after it happened. A routine command could clean permissions, update records, and make a later deletion look like panic. The original version weakened again. It had depended on one frightened driver doing one suspicious thing alone. Now the case had another possibility. A frightened driver had crashed for one reason, while someone else used the crash to hide an earlier cause. The missing piece came from an archived dispatch screen. Lena had changed Evan's route at 9:18 p.m. Not after the crash, not during the cleanup. 24 minutes before impact, she had reassigned him to a shortcut under the overpass. The system flagged the change in amber. Low clearance warning, poor signal zone. Navigation instability reported. Mara stared at the warning until the case settled into place. The phone had not frozen randomly at the bend. It had struggled earlier inside a route the company system already knew was unreliable. Evan had followed the assignment because temporary drivers followed assignments. Then the crash gave everyone a better story. A distracted driver was simple. A frozen app was unlucky. A deleted route file made Evan look afraid of his own mistake. Lena had not created the facts. She had selected which facts would carry weight. After the crash, the policy refresh cleaned the device state. The deleted file pointed suspicion toward Evan. The server copy returned later, exposing that the timeline had been managed from 2 places at once. Mara called Evan again. This time, when she asked about the route change, he stopped protecting the story. "She told me not to mention it," he said. His voice cracked once she said he'd lose the job. Mara wrote the conclusion without using the word conspiracy. That word made people stop listening. She wrote sequence instead. A risky route was assigned before the crash. A known warning was ignored before the crash. After the crash, the records were arranged, so the visible mistake belonged to the weakest person in the chain. That was the lesson the file taught. People think deception means fake evidence. In reality, the most durable deception often uses true details. It places them in the wrong order. It gives one detail louder meaning than another. It lets a frightened person carry blame because fear already looks suspicious. The science was not exotic. Clocks disagreed less than the people did. Memory weakened under pressure. Backups preserved versions, not morality. A deletion did not explain intent by itself. Mara sent her report with all 4 logs attached. Then she added one final note. The official version failed because it began too late. It started at impact. The cause had started at 9:18. When a warning appeared, a route changed, and someone decided the fastest path mattered more than the risk. The payout did not go through that week. Neither did Mara's review. Her supervisor read the report twice, then closed his office door. By noon, legal had the log. By evening, the company had stopped using that shortcut route. No one called it a confession. Lena was placed on leave pending review. The fleet manager stopped answering casual questions. Evan kept his job, but not his ease. He began sending every route change to himself by email. Mara saw him once in the lobby. He held a paper cup with both hands, though it was empty. When he thanked her, he looked embarrassed by the words. She only nodded. There was no clean ending to give him. The crash still happened. The van still struck concrete. Her rejected safety upgrades still sat in an old email chain, procedural and defensible. That part did not vanish. Weeks later, Mara kept the first report in a drawer. Not as proof she had been right. As a warning, a story can look complete because everyone inside it needs relief. But facts do not care which version is easiest to carry. Sometimes the first lie is not a sentence. Sometimes it is where the clock begins.